They say dogs bark for 3 reasons: fear, danger, or love. But that Tuesday at Pine Ridge Elementary, Bruno, the school's beloved K9, barked like he was ripping a hole through the walls of hell. It started at precisely 12:07 p.m., in the corner of the cafeteria where the loners sat. The squeak of lunch trays, the high-pitched laughter of 4th graders, and the sterile hum of fluorescent lights created the usual lunchroom chaos. But Bruno wasn't focused on the noise. He had locked onto one lunchbox, and he wouldn't let go. He lunged so hard on his lead that Officer Daniels nearly dropped his coffee. The bark that came out of Bruno's throat wasn't aggressive. It was primal, deep, urgent, like a warning before something terrible happens. Kids stopped chewing. A teacher dropped her fork. One child screamed. The barking didn't stop, and neither did the ticking clock. Bruno wasn't just a dog. He was a certified detection K9 with a 5-year career sniffing out everything from narcotics to rare chemicals. He'd once helped break a fentanyl smuggling case in El Paso. Now he wore a service vest and a badge that said K9 School Resource Unit. He wasn't trained to bark unless it meant serious danger. Officer Daniels, a former Marine with nerves like ice, knelt beside his partner. "Easy, buddy, what do you got?" Bruno's focus never shifted. He was locked in on a metal Spider-Man lunchbox, red and blue with a scratch on the side, that sat untouched at the edge of a cafeteria table. The kid sitting next to it was Liam Carter, 10 years old, pale and quiet, a loner by nature. He looked around, confused, cheeks flushing. "That's mine," he said softly. "Why's your dog freaking out?" Daniels looked from Bruno to the boy, then back to the box. "You sure?" "My mom made it," Liam added. "Same lunch as always. PB&J, goldfish, and a juice box." Bruno's growling deepened. At first, people thought it was a mistake. Dogs had bad days too, right? Maybe Bruno smelled something weird but harmless. But then he bit down on the lunchbox. Not hard enough to break it open, just enough to drag it off the table and pin it between his front paws. He barked again, louder now. This time it sounded like panic. Daniels's instincts kicked in. "Get the kids out now!" Teachers started ushering students toward the exits. One boy cried, "Are we gonna blow up?" Daniels didn't answer. Because he didn't know. The cafeteria cleared out in under 2 minutes. Liam stood frozen until a counselor guided him gently away. Bruno never once let go of the box. He was vibrating with tension, his fur bristling, nostrils flaring. Daniels pulled out his phone and called it in. "Possible hazardous material in the cafeteria. Need hazmat team and detection unit. K9 indicates chemical threat. Could be foodborne. Send a med team, just in case." Then he knelt beside Bruno again and whispered, "You did good, boy. Just hang on." As they waited, Daniels looked closer at the lunchbox. Nothing seemed out of place. No wires, no ticking, no chemical burns or odd smells. But then something made him pause. It was cold. The outside of the box was colder than the air around it. It hadn't been refrigerated. It had come from the boy's backpack. That didn't make sense. And Bruno, trained on over a dozen chemical signatures, was shaking now. Not in fear, but in pure focus. If you believe dogs like Bruno are more than heroes, they're family, consider subscribing to our channel, Heroes for Animals. Your support helps us tell real stories of animal bravery, one bark at a time. By the time the hazmat team arrived, the entire school was on lockdown. Liam's mother had been called. She was on her way. The cafeteria was sealed, ventilated, and scanned. Bruno sat outside with Daniels, breathing heavily but refusing to take his eyes off the building. Liam's mother arrived 10 minutes later, breathless and panicked. "I don't understand," she said, grabbing the principal's arm. "I didn't pack him a lunch today." Everyone froze. "What?" Daniels asked, stepping forward. "I overslept. I gave him lunch money and told him to buy food from the cafeteria." The room went dead silent. Then Daniels turned slowly toward the red and blue lunchbox, still sealed, still lying where Bruno had left it, waiting for someone to open it. The lunchbox sat on the stainless steel cafeteria table like a question no one wanted to answer. Outside, Pine Ridge Elementary was quiet, too quiet for a Tuesday afternoon. Students had been evacuated to the gymnasium. Teachers stood in huddled groups, whispering, glancing toward the main building. And in the middle of it all, Bruno lay in the grass, ears perked, tail motionless, eyes locked on the cafeteria doors. He wasn't panting. He was waiting. Officer Daniels stood a few feet away, arms crossed, staring at the red and blue lunchbox through the reinforced glass. His stomach was tight, his jaw locked. A 10-year-old had brought that lunchbox to school, and now it was being treated like a bomb. Inside, the hazmat team from the county sheriff's office moved with practiced precision. One of them, a woman named Kate Monroe, slowly opened the lunchbox with tongs, her hands steady inside thick gloves. A second team member stood beside her, reading the chemical scanner's early readings. Daniels watched from outside, unable to hear a word, but he could read their faces. Concern, then surprise, then alarm. Kate stepped back quickly, muttering something to her partner. They immediately sealed the box inside a transparent container and walked it out the back door toward the mobile lab unit. The principal tried to follow, but Daniels raised a hand. "Let them work." The principal nodded and backed off, sweat visible beneath his collar. Daniels returned to Bruno. The dog stood as he approached, nudging his handler's leg with his nose. "You okay, buddy?" Bruno gave a low grunt, still watching the building, still on edge. It was then that Liam's mother came back outside. Her name was Jessica Carter, mid-30s, single parent, worked double shifts at the grocery store in town. Her hair was frizzy from stress, and her eyes were rimmed red from crying. "I swear," she told Daniels again, her voice shaking, "I didn't pack it. He must have found it on the bench or something. I don't know. He said it was his. I figured maybe one of the teachers gave him something." Daniels crouched down to her level. "Jessica, listen to me. Did he have anything else with him this morning?" "No, just his backpack. Same one. I packed him a bottle of water and his hoodie. That's it. No lunchbox." Daniels nodded slowly. "And no one at home who might have left it for him? An uncle? Neighbor?" Her face darkened. "No, just me and him." By now, Liam was sitting in the nurse's office, wrapped in a school blanket, legs swinging off the cot. The counselor sat nearby, offering juice and soft questions. "Do you remember who gave you that lunch, Liam?" He shook his head. "It was already on the table." "But you thought it was yours?" He hesitated. "I don't know. It looked cool. I never had a Spider-Man lunchbox." The counselor exchanged a look with the nurse. That one sentence said so much. Liam wanted it to be his, maybe even pretended it was, because pretending was easier than being the kid who never had one. Out in the parking lot, the county's mobile chemical lab ran the initial samples through. Daniels waited beside the technician, watching the readings roll across the screen. Kate Monroe came over, removing her gloves and exhaling sharply. "We've got confirmation," she said. Daniels looked at her. "Thallium nitrate." He blinked. "That's industrial grade." "Correct," she said grimly. "Used in rodenticides, toxic in small doses, odorless, tasteless. You'd never know it was there." Daniels's mind raced. "Enough to kill a kid?" "More than enough," Kate said. "If he'd eaten that sandwich, he'd be in a coma within the hour, and dead by morning." Silence. Then Daniels muttered, "Bruno, you beautiful bastard." They called in the state investigator that evening. The media hadn't caught on yet, thank God, but Daniels knew it was only a matter of time before someone blabbed. So the school district was already drafting a statement, carefully worded to avoid panic. "Hazardous substance identified and isolated with the help of our K9 unit." No mention of how close they came to burying a child. Daniels didn't leave campus until nearly 8 p.m. Bruno rode in the passenger seat like always, nose pressed to the window, eyes still scanning. They stopped by the park before heading home. Bruno relieved himself near the tree line, then returned to sit beside Daniels at the bench. Neither of them said anything for a while. Then Daniels pulled a small treat from his coat. "Never disobeyed in your life," he said softly, handing it over. "Until today." Bruno took it gently, chewing like it was sacred. "I'm glad you did, partner." The next morning, Pine Ridge Elementary reopened with limited classes. The lunchroom remained sealed, cordoned off by yellow tape and quiet janitorial apologies. But by then, the mystery had only gotten deeper. Security footage had been pulled and reviewed overnight. Daniel sat with the IT director and the school's resource officer in a small conference room lit by a buzzing ceiling light. The video played on a laptop. 11:53 a.m. The cafeteria, mostly empty. A small figure enters from the side hallway. The quality was grainy, but it was clearly a kid. Hoodie pulled low, backpack slung over one shoulder. They walked quickly to a table in the back, placed the Spider-Man lunchbox down, and left. No teachers saw it. No cameras caught the face. "Can you enhance that?" Daniels asked. The IT guy tried, zoomed, brightened. Still blurry, still unidentifiable. And that's when Daniels started thinking about motive. Who brings poisoned food into a school and leaves it for a child to find? A psychopath? A prank gone wrong? Or something even darker? He had no answers, but he had a sick feeling in his gut. Later that day, Daniels visited Jessica and Liam at their apartment. Jessica was exhausted. Liam was quiet, withdrawn. His eyes lit up when he saw Bruno at the door. "Can he come in?" "Of course," Daniels said, unclipping the leash. Bruno trotted over and laid beside Liam on the couch, head on the boy's knee. Liam didn't say anything for a while. Then, very softly, "I didn't know it was poison. I thought it was a good day." Daniels nodded slowly. "Sometimes the bad guys try to make it look like a good day, buddy." Liam looked at him. "Do you think someone wanted to hurt me?" Daniels didn't answer, because truthfully, he didn't know yet. The halls of Pine Ridge Elementary had never been this quiet. Even with half the students back in class and the others attending from home, a chill still clung to the walls like morning frost. Teachers whispered behind classroom doors. Parents kept calling the office. And Liam Carter hadn't returned to school since the incident. And that red and blue lunchbox, it was now sitting in an evidence locker 3 towns over, sealed, catalogued, and treated like a murder weapon. But none of that explained how it got there. Or, more importantly, why it was there at all. Officer Daniels sat in the empty teacher's lounge, nursing lukewarm coffee and watching Bruno snooze under the table. The dog had finally relaxed, tail curled under his body, paws twitching gently as he dreamed. Even heroes needed rest. Daniels stared at the bulletin board beside the fridge. Flyers, schedules, a list of birthdays. One sheet in bold red letters read, "Please do not leave unlabeled food in the staff fridge." He shook his head and muttered, "Guess we can add, 'Do not poison children' to that." That's when a voice behind him spoke. "I might know that smell." Daniels turned to see Ms. Halverson, the science teacher, standing in the doorway. She was in her early 60s, silver hair clipped back, lab coat still on despite the end of the day. She looked tired, but alert. He stood. "Ms. Halverson, you said you smelled something familiar." She nodded and stepped closer. "I heard it was thallium nitrate. Confirmed yesterday. County ran the samples twice." Her jaw tightened. "We had a spill here, a year ago, during an advanced chemistry elective for the older kids." Daniels raised an eyebrow. "You're telling me this school had thallium nitrate on site?" "Not anymore," she said quickly. "We followed proper disposal after the incident, but some of the vials went missing before inventory. We filed it. We were told it was probably a labeling error." He leaned in. "Do you remember who was in that class?" She closed her eyes, thinking. Then she said a name that sent a jolt through Daniels' spine. "Brady Miles." Brady Miles, age 12, was the kind of kid who knew too much for his own good. He had a chip on his shoulder the size of Texas, and the smarts to be dangerous. His older brother, Jeremy, had been expelled from high school the year prior for dealing prescription pills. And rumor had it, he blamed one of the teachers at Pine Ridge for reporting him. "Brady's sharp," Ms. Halverson said. "Too sharp. I caught him mixing compounds once without approval. When I confronted him, he said it was just an experiment." Daniels frowned. "Has he had any problems with Liam?" She hesitated. "Not that I know of, but he's had problems with authority." By the time Daniels tracked Brady down, the kid was sitting in the library, headphones on, slumped low in his chair like he had something to hide. The librarian gave Daniels a look like, "Please, take him." He approached casually and pulled out the chair across from Brady. The boy didn't even look up. "Am I in trouble again?" Daniels folded his hands. "Should you be?" Brady yanked off the headphones and scoffed. "I didn't bring any bombs to school, if that's what you're asking. No one said anything about bombs." Brady's smirk faded for a split second. Daniels leaned in. "We have security footage. Someone your height, your build, hoodie and all. And we're running fingerprint analysis on the box. You want to tell me something before that comes back?" Silence. Then Brady muttered, "It wasn't for that kid." That line hit like a sledgehammer. Daniels kept his voice calm. "Excuse me?" Brady sat back, arms folded, eyes hard. "It wasn't for him. That little loner. He just took it. Thought it was free lunch or something." "Who was it for, Brady?" A long pause. His lips pressed into a thin line. Then, "It was for Mr. Dalton." Daniels blinked. Dalton? The substitute?" Brady nodded. "He's the one who called the cops on Jeremy. Got him expelled. My brother's life got ruined, and that guy just comes in here like he's some hero." "And your plan was to kill him?" Brady shrugged, but his voice cracked. "I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt. Just scared. Sick, maybe." Daniel stared at him. The kid had no clue how deadly that compound was. No idea he'd almost killed a classmate with a peanut butter sandwich and a juice box. "You laced food with poison and left it on a table for a teacher," Daniels said, low and cold. "That's not a prank. That's a felony." Brady's eyes dropped. He didn't speak again. Back at the precinct, Daniels sat in the report room going over the facts. The lunchbox wasn't Liam's. It had been planted, intended for a specific adult. Brady admitted guilt, but not remorse. Bruno was the only thing standing between a tragedy and a miracle. Daniels closed his laptop and rubbed his eyes. The thing that haunted him most wasn't Brady's face or the confession. It was the idea that no one would have known. If Bruno hadn't barked, if Liam had opened that box and eaten that sandwich, it would have looked like a food allergy. A freak reaction. Maybe not even suspicious. By the time they figured it out, Liam would have been in the ground. And the trail? Cold? Daniels made one last stop before heading home that night. He pulled up to Jessica Carter's apartment just after sunset. The porch light flickered overhead. She answered the door wearing a hoodie and tired eyes. "Can I help you?" He motioned to Bruno, who waited in the cruiser. "Mind if we come in?" Inside, Liam sat at the kitchen table drawing dinosaurs. He lit up when he saw Bruno, who immediately padded over and rested his head on the boy's lap. Daniels took a deep breath. "I wanted to let you both know. We found out what happened." Jessica's hands trembled slightly as she poured coffee. "You did?" He explained everything. Brady, the poison, the target, the mistake. She listened silently, one hand on Liam's shoulder the whole time, then barely above a whisper, "So he could have died, and no one would have known." Daniels nodded. "But Bruno did." That night, Bruno slept curled beside Daniels's bed, head resting on an old towel that smelled like school floors and cafeteria pizza. Daniels stared at the ceiling for a long time. This wasn't just a case anymore. This was a reminder that sometimes the heroes don't wear uniforms. They don't carry guns or drive black and white cruisers. Sometimes the hero is a four-legged soul who listens more than he speaks. And sometimes All it takes to change a child's fate is a bark. The wind had picked up by the time Officer Daniels stepped onto the school grounds the next morning. A fall breeze swept yellow leaves across the sidewalks, but the quiet felt loaded. Like the building itself knew something had happened inside it that couldn't be scrubbed clean with bleach and apologies. He adjusted his jacket and walked up the steps of Pine Ridge Elementary, Bruno trotting beside him, alert and steady as ever. That morning, Daniels didn't come as just a school resource officer. He came to finish what Bruno had started. Inside the admin office, the school secretary handed him a warm cup of coffee. 2 creams, no sugar. She didn't say much, just gave him a small nod of gratitude and went back to sorting attendance slips. Word had gotten around fast. Bruno saved a boy's life. But nobody knew just how deep this went. Not yet. In the IT room, Daniels met with the district's forensic tech, a wiry guy named Curtis, who looked like he hadn't slept since the Clinton administration. Curtis sat hunched over the playback terminal, eyes bloodshot and scanning frame by frame through security footage. "Morning, Curtis," Daniels said, setting the coffee down. Curtis grunted. "We've got something." Daniels pulled a chair beside him. Bruno sat at their feet, like a quiet guardian. The screen showed footage from 2 days prior. Monday morning, 11:53 a.m. The cafeteria was nearly empty, just a couple custodians and a janitor passing through. Then it happened. A figure entered frame from the side door. Small, hoodie pulled low. They walked with fast, calculated steps, almost like they were checking every corner. The kid approached a bench along the back wall, the exact one Liam sat at every day, and placed the Spider-Man lunchbox down. Then they left. Simple as that. "Still think it's Brady?" Curtis asked. Daniels studied the body language. "Maybe, but something's off." He replayed the tape again, zoomed, enhanced contrast. The stride was different, slower, heavier, more confident. "Brady's cocky," Daniels said, "but he doesn't move like this." Curtis clicked another tab. "There's more." He brought up hallway footage from earlier that morning. Same hoodie, same size. But this time, the figure lingered at the staff lounge. They peeked in, then backed away. "Why would a kid be snooping around the teacher's fridge?" Curtis asked. Daniels rubbed his jaw, looking to see where Mr. Dalton eats. "Or checking if the trap would work," Curtis said. Daniels shook his head. "But Brady said he left it for Dalton on a bench. If this kid was going to poison a teacher, why not use the staff fridge?" That's when it hit him. What if the kid wasn't trying to poison a teacher at all? What if Brady had lied? Later that day, Daniels paid another visit to Ms. Halverson, the science teacher who first recognized the chemical signature. She greeted him with a slight frown, and the same gray lab coat, chalk smudged on one sleeve. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday," she offered as they walked the empty hallway. "About Brady, about the thallium." Daniels nodded. "I need to see that old class list." She pulled a file folder from her desk drawer and handed it to him. "Here, elective chemistry students, fall semester, last year." He flipped through the list and paused at a name. Kayla Owens, quiet girl, always wore oversized sweatshirts, smart, but never raised her hand. He remembered her because she once fainted during a school fire drill. Not from smoke, but from panic. "Did she ever cause trouble?" Daniels asked. Halverson frowned. "Not really, but she was close to Jeremy Miles." Daniels looked up. "Brady's brother?" She nodded. "They dated briefly. Some say she was more into it than he was. After the expulsion, she kind of shut down." Daniels found Kayla in the art room, sitting quietly as students packed up around her. The final bell had rung, and kids were eager to leave. Kayla stayed behind, fingers streaked with blue and gold paint, eyes focused on a small canvas. Daniels approached gently. Bruno waited by the door. "Hey, Kayla," he said, keeping his voice low. "Got a minute?" She looked up, startled. "Am I in trouble?" "No, ma'am. Just want to talk." They sat across from each other, the afternoon sun slanting through high windows and lighting up her work. It was a painting of a lunch table, empty, but with a bright red and blue box in the center. Daniels stared at it. "Where'd you get the idea for that?" She shrugged. "I don't know. Just popped into my head." His voice was steady. "Kayla, we've been reviewing footage. Something doesn't match Brady's story. I think you know that." She looked away. "You were there," he continued. "You placed the lunchbox." Tears welled in her eyes. "He said it would make things better, that no one would get hurt." "Brady said that." She nodded. "He said Mr. Dalton ruined his family, and that if the lunch ended up with a teacher, it would send a message. But Liam took it." She started to cry. "I didn't know. I swear, I just did what he told me. I didn't think anyone would eat it." Daniel sighed. His chest tightened, not in anger, but in heartbreak. This wasn't just a criminal act. It was manipulation. A broken kid using another broken kid to do something irreversible. That night, Daniels filed 2 reports. One was for the DA's office, recommending charges against Brady Miles for attempted poisoning and conspiracy to commit harm on school property. The other was for the school board, a request for full-time mental health services at Pine Ridge Elementary. He finished the paperwork just past midnight. Bruno snored on his dog bed beside the desk, tail twitching like he was chasing something in his dreams. Daniels glanced over at him. "You were right again, partner." The next day, the principal called a staff meeting. Parents were notified. The district prepared statements. Rumors ran wild, but the truth, the full, quiet, complicated truth, remained under tight watch. And in the center of it all, Bruno got a new tag added to his collar. It read, "Guardian, Hero, Bruno." But Bruno didn't care about medals. He cared about Liam. And when the boy finally returned to school that Friday, a little shy and clinging to his backpack, Bruno broke from Daniels's side and trotted over. He sat right in front of Liam and wagged his tail. Liam knelt and threw his arms around Bruno's neck. "I missed you too," he whispered. The leaves outside Pine Ridge Elementary had begun to turn. Bright yellows and rusty reds danced in the crisp October breeze. But inside the school, the mood was heavier than fall skies. Liam Carter sat in the counselor's office, swinging his legs back and forth beneath a worn wooden chair. He had a juice box in one hand and a crumpled tissue in the other. Bruno lay by his feet, unmoving, eyes open, watching. He hadn't left Liam's side since the boy returned. Not once. And no one questioned it. Down the hallway, Officer Daniels stood in the faculty lounge with Principal Harrington and Ms. Alvarez, the school counselor. All 3 were exhausted. "We've confirmed Kayla Owens was the one who placed the lunchbox," Daniels said, flipping through his notes. "She's cooperating. She didn't prepare it, didn't buy the chemicals, didn't plan the timing." "And Brady?" the principal asked. Daniels nodded grimly. "He orchestrated everything." Ms. Alvarez looked visibly shaken. "He's 12. I mean, this isn't a food fight or a prank with stink bombs. He planned to poison someone." "Worse," Daniels said. "He planned to let someone else take the fall if it went wrong." It was true. Brady had been playing both sides from the beginning. After his older brother Jeremy was expelled for dealing pills on campus, Brady had gone quiet. Not angry, not loud, just cold, calculating. What Daniels hadn't realized until now was that Mr. Dalton, the substitute teacher Brady had blamed, wasn't the one who turned Jeremy in. That had been Ms. Halverson, the science teacher. She had filed a report after catching Jeremy digging through the chemical cabinet unsupervised. But she never told anyone except administration. Brady assumed it had been Dalton because Dalton was new, because he looked like the type who followed the rules, because it was easier to blame a face he didn't know. Daniels pulled out the report from the previous school year, signed and time-stamped. "Brady targeted the wrong man," he muttered, "and nearly killed a child." That afternoon, Daniels visited the Miles household. He didn't bring Bruno. Some things were best handled alone. The Miles home sat on the edge of town, just past the train tracks. Paint peeled from the porch railings. The grass was overgrown. The screen door hung crooked. Brady's mother answered, cigarette in hand, dark circles under her eyes. "Again?" she muttered. "What now?" Daniels stayed professional. "Ma'am, I need to speak to Brady. He's grounded." "This isn't a curfew violation." She stepped aside. Brady was sitting at the kitchen table, hands in his lap. He didn't look up. Daniels took the chair across from him. "You lied to me." Brady shrugged. "What else is new?" "You said Dalton turned in your brother." "That was false." Brady hesitated. "It doesn't matter." "It does matter. You tried to poison someone, and instead, you nearly killed Liam Carter. You remember him? The quiet kid? The one who never talks back? The one your friends used to make fun of for wearing the same hoodie every day?" Brady said nothing. Daniels leaned in, voice low but firm. "Do you even know what would have happened to him if Bruno hadn't barked? You think he'd get sick and go home with a stomach ache? Thallium doesn't give second chances." Still no response. Daniels dropped a small photograph on the table. It was a printout of the lab report. Toxic levels. Lethal dose. Underneath it, Liam's school picture. Brady looked at it. Then, very quietly, he asked, "Is he okay?" Daniels nodded. "Because of Bruno, not because of you." Brady's eyes dropped, not in shame, in defeat. Later that night, Daniels sat at home with Bruno curled up by the fireplace. He stared at the flickering flames, the echo of Brady's words still rattling around in his head. It doesn't matter. But it did matter. Intent mattered. Truth mattered. And most of all, what you do when no one's watching. That was what mattered most. Daniels thought of Liam, of how close they'd come to a funeral, of how the truth had slowly unwrapped itself, layer by layer, like a trap someone forgot they set. He sipped cold coffee and scratched behind Bruno's ear. "You saved that boy," he whispered. "You didn't just bark. You knew." Bruno gave a soft whine and laid his head on Daniels's foot. At school the next morning, something extraordinary happened. Liam stood up in front of his fourth-grade class and gave a short presentation on canine dogs and scent detection. His hands trembled. His voice cracked. But he did it. And when he finished, he looked down at Bruno, seated proudly beside Officer Daniels, and smiled. "He's not just a dog," Liam said. "He's the reason I'm still here." The room was silent. Then someone clapped, and then another, until every child stood up and cheered, not because it was dramatic, not because they fully understood the danger, but because, deep down, they knew something had happened that could have ended very differently. And a dog made it right. In the staff room, Ms. Alvarez wiped her eyes. Principal Harrington nodded in approval. Daniels looked around the room and felt something tighten in his chest. Not fear, not sadness, pride, and also something else, responsibility. Because while the crisis had passed, the wounds it left would take longer to heal. The school board scheduled a meeting with both sets of parents, Liam's and Brady's. Mental health counselors were brought in. Kayla was moved to a youth support program with close supervision. Brady was placed in juvenile custody, pending formal charges. And Bruno? He got a new nickname from the kids, Lunchbox Bruno. Daniels wasn't sure how Bruno felt about it, but he wagged his tail every time someone said it. So maybe he didn't mind. That night, Daniels knelt beside his bed and gave Bruno a long look. "We'll always have evil in the world," he said softly. "But if we can stop it, just once, it means everything." He scratched under Bruno's chin. "And we did, partner. You did." Bruno nuzzled his chest in return. It wasn't a thank you. It was a promise. 2 years later, the new principal of Pine Ridge Elementary stood in front of the student body in the freshly painted gymnasium, holding a brass plaque in one hand and a folded American flag in the other. "Before we dismiss for Thanksgiving break," she said, "we have one more thing to share. Some of you were here 2 years ago. Some of you remember the dog who saved a child's life in this very cafeteria. His name was Bruno." The room was quiet, almost reverent. And though Bruno is no longer with us, his story, his legacy, and the lives he touched, those remain. Today, we dedicate this space, the reading corner of our new library, to him. The crowd of students clapped gently. A few teachers wiped their eyes. And at the back of the room, standing tall in a navy blue uniform, was Officer Liam Carter, age 12, eyes steady, hand on his chest. Bruno had passed 6 months prior, peacefully, at home, curled beside his best friend, Officer Daniels, who had retired the same week. The department offered to reassign Bruno to another handler, but Daniels had refused. "He finishes his watch with me," he had said. "That dog saved lives, including mine." Bruno had lived a full life. 9 years of service, 6 commendations, dozens of searches, and one unforgettable bark that changed a school forever. When he passed, the whole town came to his memorial. Kids brought drawings, parents brought flowers. The mayor gave a speech. But Liam had said the most with the fewest words. He stepped to the front of the church and simply whispered, "He saw me when no one else did." Now, in the renovated Pine Ridge Library, a small bronze sculpture of Bruno stood beside a cozy circle of beanbags and shelves of children's books. Beneath the sculpture, the plaque read, "To Bruno, who knew something was wrong before anyone did." A quote from Daniels was etched beneath it. "Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it walks on 4 legs and waits until you listen." Officer Daniels had moved out to the edge of town, bought a quiet property with a long porch and a good view of the valley. He still volunteered at the elementary school once a month, mostly just to check in on Liam. They talked less like a child and an officer now, more like 2 men who shared a memory only they fully understood. Sometimes they'd sit on the steps and drink hot chocolate. "You still think about it?" Liam asked once, kicking his boots against the porch rail. Daniels nodded. "Every time I hear a bark I can't explain." They both chuckled softly. Liam had changed. He stood taller. His voice was deeper, and he didn't hide behind his hoodie anymore. He had made friends, joined the junior K-9 program. He'd even started training his own dog, a stubborn black lab named River. "She'll never be Bruno," he'd once admitted. Daniels placed a hand on his shoulder. "She doesn't have to be. Bruno already did his job. Now it's your turn." Brady Miles had been sent to a juvenile facility outside the county. The courts handled his case quietly but firmly. Restorative justice programs, counseling, a year of supervised care. Miss Alvarez had visited him once as part of a school outreach initiative. "He still doesn't talk about what he did," she later told Daniels, "but he listens. I think that's something." Kayla Owens transferred to a different district. With the support of mental health services, she slowly reintegrated into school life. The art teacher said she still painted red and blue lunchboxes from time to time. They weren't always the same, but they were always closed. As for the school, Pine Ridge Elementary became a model of prevention. They hired a full-time school counselor, installed a mental health resource room, and every fall they held K-9 Hero Day, where officers brought their dogs to the gym for demos, meet and greets, and safety talks. Liam gave a speech at the most recent one. He stood in front of 200 younger students, wearing his crisp cadet uniform, hands slightly trembling. "My name is Liam Carter, and I'm here because of a dog who didn't just protect people, he understood them." He took a breath. "A lot of you don't know what it feels like to be invisible. But I did. Bruno didn't just bark at a lunchbox. He barked for me, and because he did, I got to grow up." The auditorium was silent. Then applause rolled through the bleachers like a web of light. Bruno's photo, framed in black walnut, hung just above the podium. He wasn't smiling. Dogs don't pose like that. But something in his eyes said he knew that even if he was gone, he had finished his watch. That evening, Daniels sat on his porch as the last orange streaks of daylight gave way to night. The wind rustled dry leaves, and in the distance a coyote called to no one in particular. He sipped coffee and looked at the empty spot by his side, where Bruno used to lie, and smiled. because now that spot wasn't empty. River, Liam's black lab in training, had taken to sleeping there when Liam came over on weekends. She looked up at Daniels with those same calm, alert eyes. Different dog, same heartbeat. Daniels whispered into the quiet, "You've got big paws to fill, girl." River wagged once and rested her head on the porch rail. Sometimes all it takes is a moment, a single sound, a bark no one expects, and everything changes, not because it was loud, but because it came from the one who saw what no one else could. Thank you for following Bruno's story. If you were moved by this tale, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed an animal step in at the exact moment someone needed it most? Drop your story in the comments below. We read every one. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals for more true, powerful stories about the animals who protect us, heal us, and sometimes save our lives. From all of us, thank you for believing in the silent heroes.